This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And the music you're listening to is from my very good friend, Jeff Brisbane. It's called I Wish You Enough. And today, I think we can definitely wish everyone enough with my guest, Vince Kramer, because Vince is a coach, and he, if I'm reading his bio properly, he helps us all find our potential in life. And I don't know about many of you, but there have been many days that I'll wake up thinking, why the heck am I doing what I'm doing? What was I put on this earth to accomplish? And sometimes it's a little bit of overthinking. So Vince, tell us how you got into this area of expertise and why.
The interesting thing, Karen, is that I think, like all of us, I knew when I came into this existence that I was meant to do something in alignment with helping people find who they are and really live that. At 5 years old, I told my grandmother that I wanted to help people love themselves so they could love others. Now, where in the world does a 5-year-old come up with that?
Exactly.
But what the interesting thing that happened was it didn't take long for that little 5-year-old to start listening to what was expected of me and really being influenced by my mother, of course, but also a lot of men in my life. And my father being one of them, a neighbor being another, but the most influential was my grandfather. He was actually my step-grandfather. And I think he was mostly the one that I felt like I had to listen to because I really wanted him to love and accept me.
Interesting.
And because of that, I took on a lot of his rules. I really learned how to be a man from somebody who grew up in the 30s. And through that, I learned competition. I've got to be the best. It's never good enough. No matter how hard you work, somebody's going to take it away if you don't stay on top of things. So it didn't take me long to forget what that little 5-year-old knew. Now, my grandmother on her deathbed tried to remind me when I was 17 years old, but I went right back into Grandpa's rules shortly thereafter. And it took me 45 years of my life from the time that I was that 5-year-old to realize that I had been living by a set of rules that weren't mine. There wasn't the set of rules that I brought into our world. So from there, I started looking for what was missing. I had a couple wake-up calls in my life, some of them pretty severe, and I started looking for what was missing, and I found that little 5-year-old again.
You know, it's interesting because I've shared this many, many times. I know as a young child, I had this idea of who I was going to grow up to be. And I remember probably around age of 8 or 9, we were sitting on our front porch on a summer day. And I looked at my parents and I said, see that house across the street? I really like that. So someday I'm going to get married and my husband and I are going to live there. And we're going to have 3 children just like you did. And on Friday nights, we'll come to dinner at your house. And on Sunday, you'll come to brunch at our house. And my mother just beamed. She was ecstatic because that's basically what her life had been like, you know? And I just remembered it for many, many years. And then I went and got married and I moved not only out of state, but a good 12 hours away from my parents. And my mother reminded me on my first wedding anniversary that I didn't keep my promise. And I said, well, you don't live in that same house anymore. And she said, you're right, but you don't even live in the city. And I think back to it that there are certain things that we really thought we were going to do. And yet we're on this journey through life and it takes us in different directions. Like your step grandfather coming into the picture and putting across these rules that made sense to you at the time.
Definitely. Definitely. And, it took a while for me to look at things from a whole different paradigm and understand that, especially in what we're experiencing in the world right now, we've got to all find that thing that we're here to do. And I truly believe we made that decision before we came. I
Right.
believe we brought it in. And, that little 5-year-old still remembered it. And I see so many people, they're almost happy, or life is almost as good as they want it. And what I found was that the almost is just showing us we're just not quite there. We're just not quite bringing to the world that we're meant to. And then there's others, like you said, that are wandering around, wondering, when am I going to find my purpose? When is it going to show up? And we're looking for this why in our life. And the other thing that I've learned through the journey is it's not just the why. We have to learn who we are energetically. We have to know, why in the world did we live all these circumstances that we live? All these things that we've done that have seemed like we might be a victim, or why would this happen to me? There's so many gifts and talents that come from those things. And I truly have found that the what of our unique purpose are those gifts and talents. And if we're not delivering them, especially the ones that we learned in some of our toughest times, then that's also creating the gap. And then once we know that who and what, now it's really easy to find the why. And the why is a difference, not something you're doing. That's the what. The why is the difference that you're here to make. And once we uncover that, our world opens up to us.
Well, I can definitely relate to everything that you're saying, because like your step grandfather influenced you, obviously my parents influenced me greatly. There were certain things that I felt I had to do because of the way I was raised, and I didn't want to disappoint anybody. And I have been a pleaser the majority of my life. And it's only within the last year or two that I have chosen that I need to please me before I can please others. In the past, it was pleasing everybody else, make them happy, and then I'm going to be happy. And the reality was, it wasn't there. I mean, sometimes yes, but most of the time, no. And then I'd be angry because, well, I made you happy, but look where I am now. And it probably was within the last couple of years in doing the podcast, and especially doing Avoid the Maze, talking to individuals like you and finding out, wow, I wasn't alone. We've all been on this crazy, crazy journey. And it's okay to talk about the past and help you find out what were the great things that happened, but what were the things that weren't so great, and what did you learn from them? So when you said it was like 45 years later that this 5-year-old sort of like came out again and said, hey, buddy, you're not doing what you wanted to do. How did you receive that?
Well, first it was difficult because, like I said, I had 3 wake-up calls, big wake-up calls. I've probably had hundreds of wake-up calls along the journey, but what we call at Imagine Miracles crisis wake-up calls are those things that happen that you can't avoid looking at. Am I living life the way that I'm really supposed to? Am I as happy as I know I'm supposed to be? Am I fulfilled? My crisis wake-up calls were 9/11. Very, very similar to most people that are a little bit older in the States. That was definitely a wake-up call. I actually flew flight 93 1 week prior to 9/11. So
Wow.
if the attacks would have happened on 9/4, I probably would have been the air crew that crashed in Pennsylvania. So that was something that really should have gotten my attention, and it did for all of us for a while. But if we don't know how to step into it, or we still are following, in my case, grandpa's rules, then we kind of brush it over or off for some reason.
Right.
I brushed it off as, that would never happen to me, and we were going to put things in place that it'll never happen again. And it's just push forward, push forward, push forward, just like grandpa taught me to do. So I did, and I pushed forward into several years later, a couple of years later, when United Airlines went bankrupt. And that bankruptcy should have gotten my attention. I lost 60% of my pay. I lost all of my pension. And what really happened was internally, I lost my belief in loyalty. And because of that, I started to look at life. Is this really where I want to be? Is this really what I want to do? But the rules kicked in again. My dad taught me it's my job to make sure that I provided for my family. And if you don't have a retirement when it's time to retire, what are you going to do?
Right.
Who are you? That's definitely a grade card. So what did I do? I went out and bought some businesses. I was going to make my retirement that way. Ended up working 95-hour weeks for several years between the two jobs, trying to make things work. And while that happened, my ex-wife had an affair. And that was finally the wake-up call I paid attention to. And thank goodness for coaches, thank goodness for mentors, thank goodness for people who bring these great programs to the world. Because of Jack Canfield, I was able to find what was missing in my life, and it was me.
It's interesting when you talk about these different wake-up calls. And like you said, there probably are many more, but maybe some that you just didn't notice. And we all go through them. And I know that my first marriage really was based on the fact of who his parents expected him to marry, who my parents expected me to marry. We met, and even though my parents didn't care for him and his parents didn't care for me, we were sort of following that routine of what they were expecting of us. And we tried to make it work. And when it didn't work, I remember waking up one morning saying, I only know how to be a wife and a mother, but now I have to be a single mom and I have to go back to work, and I don't know who I am. And, I started to get to know who I was, but I still kept listening to those old tapes, which many of us do for a very long time. And it's not unusual. And I only found this out within the last 5 to 10 years that most of us go through life with blinders on because we want to fit in somewhere. We want to do the right thing. But obviously you found out that doing what you thought was the right thing really wasn't. So how did you make that change when you said, okay, enough's enough?
Well, the interesting thing is, first of all, those blinders, that's our belief system. And our beliefs are formed, the majority of it, unless you realize, and this is really important for everyone, beliefs aren't real. They can be changed. And if I would have known that earlier, I probably wouldn't have taken 45 years. But that those blinders really come from us wanting to be loved, wanted to be accepted, wanted to be safe, wanted to be fed. So whatever our parents or our guardians or those that were in charge, quote, quote, of helping us learn how to be an adult, we took on what they wanted us to do or how they wanted us to show up and form these beliefs.
Right.
So that in itself um, creates the blinders, and it's easier for us just to stay with the old beliefs and then blame it on the outside when we're not happy or whatever. But one of the things that I want to share, I'm really big into science and really big into understanding how energy affects us. And quantum physics gives us a lot of that information. But thanks to my new wife and my business partner, Mary, she brought spirituality into my life in a different way. And when you start combining science and spirituality and realize that they're really walking hand in hand, now you can look at life from the place of there are no mistakes or coincidences. Quantum physics tells us that. So the attracting your first husband into your life and the things that you learned and the experiences that you've had prepared you for so much more. And I think that helped me the best, learning that I was, by being the observer per the quantum physics, I was the observer of my life and the creator of my reality. And I hated that at first. Why would I create some of the pain that I had gone through? But as I got more in touch with who I am and tapped into my true guidance, it was easy for me to go back and say, that's why I was married. That's why that experience happened, because now I understand the pain of not knowing why somebody would not be happy with you, or not knowing that work makes you a very unpleasant person. And
Exactly.
so I learned all those things on that journey. But it wasn't easy at first, stepping into a new paradigm, taking responsibility for my life, not allowing myself to be a victim through everything. And it's, the thing that I want to share with everyone is, once you realize that you truly are the creator of your life, it does open up so many doors, but you've got to be willing to step through on that.
And we have to find a way to stop being afraid. There's difference between being afraid and some fear and trepidation moving forward. I know for so long I was afraid. In fact, I found a corporate job in education. I loved my job. In fact, if I could go back to the work that I was doing, I would. However, I hated the culture of it. And I knew I was good at it. My students still connect with me today. And I've been out of the business now about 10 years. But I felt so alive, but yet my family saw that I was basically dying a slow death, because I'd come home and I was so afraid that I was going to get a last minute phone call, an email, a text message saying, hey, why didn't you do X today? Even though I had done A through Z, but I had skipped X. And it wasn't until I left corporate America and I said, I don't want to just be sitting in the house. Number one, I can't afford to do that. Number two, I know there's more that I can do in life. And I actually sat down with a piece of paper. What is it I want to do? Well, I had gone back to school and got my master's in communications and was like, well, why aren't you using it? Okay, I can use it. And I started developing this. And all of a sudden I started realizing I may not be happy 24/7, but I can find those peaks of happiness in my day. Whereas previously, no, I was making everybody else happy other than me.
Mhm.
So you have I'm assuming it's an actual organization, Imagine, is that what the business is?
Yeah, it's called Imagine Miracles. Uh, let me share something
Okay.
before I jump into that. One of the things that you said a little earlier that I want to make sure is cleared up. Um, I didn't not like my life.
Okay.
I enjoyed achieving. I was in upper management at United. I've flown for 36 years of my life. I love flying. It was a passion also, but I also had that calling to step in to help people, and that's where Imagine Miracles came from. It was actually from me, one, that little boy knowing that I wanted to help people love themselves. And I think you shared that so well earlier. It's truly an inside job. You can't respect anybody if you don't respect yourself. You can't love anybody if you don't love yourself. It's all an inside job. And I started down that process learning about me so I could stand on stage and help people, or I could be on a Zoom call and coach and help people, because I don't really truly consider myself a coach as it shows up. I consider myself more of a guide and more of a mentor, because so many people out there teach you how to change your life the way that worked for them. And that doesn't work. It's got to be your way. So when I say guide, it's truly to help people find their way, and then to mentor them on the process and to coach them on the process. But that guide part comes first. And what I realized was that when I started uncovering how we energetically can create our lives, how we already energetically create our lives, and why we attract the people in our lives that we do. And they're the best people that we attract into our lives, and what we would consider the worst people that we attract into our lives are our biggest gifts, because they're showing us the blocks in us.
Yep.
And once we uncover through the mirrors in our lives what those blocks are, and we can learn to accept and love that part of us. We don't have to be it. We don't have to show it to the world, but we have to realize that we are it. And then it opens us up to now look at the world from no judgment or little judgment, to look at the opportunities that are available to us, because the fears that we hold on to go really back to those blinders. Am I going to be accepted? Am I going to be loved? Am I worthy? Do I deserve any of this? And which means we're living in the past. And living in the past, we can't create something different from that. And then the other big fear that we really help people with in Imagine Miracles is the unknown. Because if we're living in the known, our life's not going to be any different. And as I look at the country and I look at the world, we're really moving energetically into a time where we have to live fully who we are and support others doing the same,
Exactly.
because it's not an I world, it's a we world. And we are really truly, as a whole person, no better off than the worst person, the person that's experiencing life the worst. And we're no better than the person that's experiencing life the best. So it's how do we come in and help each other do that? And it's really about, Imagine Miracles is about vibration. Imagine creating with thought and feeling. Miracle, through an act of love, sharing your gifts and talents in a way that others can share theirs. That's what Imagine Miracles is all about.
And some people would be sitting here listening, and I can imagine this would have been me probably, about 10 years ago. And I'd say, Vince has some beautiful words he's saying there, but it can't work for me. And the reality of it is that if we want to keep walking around saying things can't happen, they will not happen. I know when I started podcasting a little, just short of 10 years ago, my son was doing an internship from his college, and he really wanted to get into broadcasting. He was a business major. And so he worked at an internet radio station. And listening to him and the programming, I said to him one day, you know, you're living my dream, and that's okay. You can live it, but I have to start living it. And he looked at me like, Mom, what are you going to do? And I went to the guys who own the station and I said, I have an idea for a program. You don't have to pay me. I'll eventually get sponsors. This is what I want to do. I want to invite people on and talk about how they got to where they are today. That may be a wonderful, happy-go-lucky show. It could be a show that we're all going to be sitting around crying about. I said, but it's going to be real. And they said, okay. And all I had was my education in communications. And I started it, and I had people all around Cleveland calling me, can I be on your show? Can I be on your show? And I didn't understand in the beginning why, because I was a novice. But then I realized what I was doing. I was giving them the platform to unburden themselves and start to take the blinders off. And the more they did, the more I did. And right before my mother passed away, I was living at her house and I was podcasting from there. And one day I said to her, Mom, I'll be back in about a half hour. I'm going to the other room to do one of my shows. And she said, honey, and she's holding my hand real tight, honey, are you a famous broadcaster? And I said, Mom, I'm as famous as they come. And I've held on to that because it's what we need to believe. I don't have to go and tell the rest of the world, but my mother needed to hear it, but I needed to say it. So if I came to you as an individual, what does Imagine Miracles help me do?
So the platform is really based on my journey and the guidance that I received along the way. And when I say guidance, I'm talking about that non-physical part of me. I'm talking about some of the best mentors in the business. I'm talking about reading hundreds of books, but the mentors came through something that happened guidance-wise. Like I'm really stuck right here, and I need somebody to help me move forward. And there would be an email show up from somebody that I never heard of before. And I'm reading through there and it's like, this is exactly what I need. Or a book would actually fall off the shelf and I would pick it up and read it. So what we did was we brought Imagine Miracles together to help people remember the reason that they chose to come in, to understand why they chose their parents, what they learned from the beliefs that they got from the people who helped bring them into the world and help raise them in the world, where all those gifts and talents, why all those circumstances happen, and then how to start living it in a way that brings you into your highest vibrations. But then to realize in this 3D world, we have to go back and look at those roadblocks and understand how to move beyond them. And then take all this knowledge that's available to us and all this understanding about how energy works, what our energy is and how we can use our specific energy to live life. So the platform is discovering, creating, and living your miracle life. And we've moved kind of beyond the miracle life to the life that you're meant to live. because we truly believe you brought that life in. Now let's remember, because we've forgotten, we've gotten opportunities to wake up. Okay, how do we start stepping into it? And Imagine Miracles is truly built around, I can teach you how to be a great Vince. I can teach you how to live your life my way, but that's not what we need. So I'm all about, and Mary's all about, how do we help you find your answers? How do we help you tap into your guidance and then support you along the way? Because it's not easy, because when you're changing paradigms, you always want to fall back
Oh,
into the old understanding, the old way. And then when those beliefs pop up, or even the subpersonalities that we've developed to protect us, don't want us to move forward. So it's the create part of it is, one, how to use energy to create. How do you really use your thoughts and feelings? Because you've been doing it all your life. How do you do it on purpose? But then that creates also about understanding those things that we don't love about ourselves, and then realizing how they're holding us back. So we do that through a year-long program or some individual coaching. And then I'll tell you, Karen, the exciting thing about Imagine Miracles is we truly believe that in community, we're so much more powerful. And there's reasons why we attract people into our lives. So we also like to help couples or business partners find individual purpose, but then realize what the purpose is of the relationship and how to live that. And to go as far as, and you mentioned this earlier, businesses have a purpose. And it's usually aligned with the founder's purpose. And then when companies are taken over by different CEOs or COOs, they come in, that they aren't necessarily aligned with the purpose of the business. So my guess is you were attracted to the purpose of the business, and the business was attracted to your purpose. But because the upper management didn't line up with the purpose, then there's that chaos.
exactly.
Energy is not in coherence. So we at Imagine Miracles like to help couples and relationships, families find their purpose, so everybody's working together, but then also businesses.
And, so many of us, and especially myself in my younger years, I was afraid to ask for help, because asking for help meant that you were lacking something. I mean, at least for my generation. Um, and so if I made a mistake, even though I would admit to it, I would sort of cover it up with, well, this is what I thought you told me to do. I'm going to apologize, but this is what I thought you told me to do. Okay, tell me how you want it done, and I'll go do it right now. And it was always, again, that pleaser in me. I just took a session, and I'm going to be taking another one on personal intelligence. And it really has opened my eyes to how I judge myself. I judge myself more harshly than anybody else ever would. Sometimes I'll look in the mirror and, oh, I can't go there because, I look too pale, or I look too something. And yet if I walk out into a group, they don't necessarily see me that way. And so I've had to say to myself, why are you doing this to yourself? Would you do it to somebody else? If you would, maybe there's a reason for it, but who are we to judge each other, at least on the things that we believe in? And my husband and I, we come from two different worlds. We've been married 38 years. We have our great days and our bad days. But we had decided right from the beginning, we did not have to agree on everything, because if we did, life would be boring. Um, and I find it interesting how some of his beliefs have sort of come over to my side. And I'm going, wait a second, I don't believe that anymore. I like what you used to believe. And it's okay, because if it enriches us and it makes our life better, how exciting is that? And so I agree. I think imagine if we can all just imagine what it would be like to feel a little bit freer. Now, I don't live in the same city as you, Vince. A lot of our listeners don't either. So can they become part of Imagine Miracles remotely?
Certainly, yes. There's so many opportunities. A matter of fact, what I would like to share is if everyone goes to Imagine Miracles, all one word, .com/avoid the maze, I'll give you an opportunity to, one, learn a little bit more about Mary and I and what Imagine Miracles do, but we'll give you the actual formula that we use to help people discover those three parts of their purpose.
How wonderful.
And there's other opportunities there too, but for the first 10 from this podcast or this radio show that come to the page and decide that they want to spend 30 to 40 minutes with either Mary or I in what we call a Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session, we will give the first 10 that session free. And just giving you an opportunity to find out what's the biggest obstacles right now and what's a really good step to step fully into who you are, because that's where the higher vibrations are. And in the higher vibrations, we're experiencing life in a great way, and we're attracting more of what we want into our lives.
So on a personal note, how did you and Mary meet? Because it sounds like this is not only a great business partnership, but a great personal partnership as well.
It certainly is. It was truly divine intervention. We met in 1997, we believe, either 96 or 97. And there was such an energetic connection that I felt in meeting her that I said, I got to stay away from this lady. I was very happily married, was not interested in wandering off in any way, but that connection was so strong. It was like, I have just got to stay away from this lady. Then 10 years later, we were both divorcing at the exact same time. And the same person invited us to talk to each other just to learn how somebody who was going through a divorce was feeling. And I'll be honest, Mary opened me up to some things that I didn't believe in and never thought I could believe in. But as she was sharing what she believed about us all being one, and sharing about how we were creators of our lives, I started doing research around science, and she has supported me on the way for me to not just wake up, but then truly step into the new paradigm in a way that I can help others do it. And then what we've learned is that we help each other wake up a little more along the way. And that's, if there's one thing, especially couples can take away from this. And I know that there's so many women that first of all, women tend to wake up earlier. And I know there's so many out there that want their spouse to come along with them, to open up to the possibilities. And I will share that once you start that journey together, the doors open. And as the doors open, you start to see, this is the reason that we're together. And some will stay together and some won't. But to learn why you're in each other's life is so powerful. And it's not a journey that you can truly do alone. You need help, you need guides, you need mentors, you need coaches. You need to have a community that says, you know what, Vince, you're really limiting yourself with those thoughts right now. And it's okay because you don't know any different. Let's find out where they came from.
Exactly. I love it. You know, in the last couple months, I created a new title for myself and I'm just branching out. But I've been working with so many coaches like yourself through this podcast. And I now have a nice database of coaches. And I am now a coach advocate because I believe in coaching. Coaching is not therapy. Therapy is something additional. If that is what you choose or what you may need, maybe in addition to coaching. But ever since I started working with coaches, I've realized that my thoughts really count. Whether the coach believes in it or not doesn't make any difference. They will get me to keep going through it until either I really see the light and yes, this is why, or gosh, those are just a bunch of words. I really don't believe in that. And there are so many of us who don't really understand coaching until you meet with a coach. And now, I guess this is the one great thing I can say about the pandemic. Most of us are getting more comfortable with Zoom, FaceTime, Microsoft Teams, and this is a great way for us to get the guidance from people that may not be our next door neighbors. So tell us again what your website is.
It's imaginemiracles.com. And you can find us just about on any social platform. Just look for Imagine Miracles. It'll show up that way.
Well, we will have all the information in the show notes. So for those of you listening and you said, you know, was it .com? What was it? Just go back to the show notes and read it. And there's a bio on Vince himself. So I can't thank you enough for joining me today. I'm going to do some more research on your website and I won't be one of the 10, I promise you, because I want our listeners to be one of the 10, but I'm going to check things out. And I appreciate both you and Mary for bringing us Imagine Miracles.
Thank you so much, Karen. I enjoyed being here. And I truly want to wish each and every person that's listening today a miracle day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.